Hi, Henk Akmans here. Supply Chain Dynamics Chapter 8, Clip 2. Tooling and Manufacturing. So we've covered the two steps in basic engineering. What then happens is that all these drawings of how the plane or the part of the plane is to be manufactured is handed over to the people who develop tools. Mind you, these planes are manufactured for 10, 20 years. So usually the tools by which they are manufactured are dedicated. They're not generic. They're made especially for them. And there are smart ways of doing that and not so smart ways. So that's a whole development process in itself. Once that's done, then those same tools end up in production. And often, as you have between basic and detailed engineering, you find flaws in production in the tools, as you also find flaws in engineering when you develop the tools. Tooling development. So again, as in detailed engineering, we have a period here where nothing happens in tooling because the detailed design is not yet complete enough. How complete? That depends on the required completeness. If you want to work very concurrent, that required completeness is very low. In the D field, it is pretty low. It's at 50%. And as soon as the detailed design then is at 50%, then all this is transferred from the left stock to the right stock, tooling in development. Everything then is manufactured again according to tool development capacity. The capacity adjustment happens pretty much the same as with in engineering. So there is a capacity adjustment process here. This leads to a certain required capacity, which in the end then to capacity required up here, which leads to an actual development capacity. So there's a peak there. Once tooling is finished, it leads to a certain completeness of the tooling. And basically that is, we do not distinguish the quality of tooling in here. We might, but we don't. The model still works in this way. So that's tooling, and once these tools are completed, you can start manufacturing. Well, you can start manufacturing before the tools are fully completed, but let's not get into that. The production starts. This starts depending on the customer order backlog, but certainly also on the scheduled first delivery. So if the time is not yet the time that you have the first delivery scheduled, then you will not start production. If you do, then a whole bunch of this gets into the production work in progress, the WIP. All these things, the required completeness of tooling and the actual, they all partly determine whether or not you can start, even if you should start. So if the tooling isn't finished yet, well, you can simply not produce. So if the completeness of tooling is at the required completeness of tooling, then you can start producing. Producing how much? Well, how much you have production capacity for, the feasible manufacturing rate, we'll get into that later. Else, you do not produce at all, even though you promised to the customers that you would start deliveries, and even though you have customer orders for this. What is then the feasible manufacturing rate? Well, it depends on how much capacity you have, but also on how good the quality of your design and the completeness of your tooling is at this stage. If you have the capacity, but the designs are still a mess and the tools are not complete, then your manufacturing rate will not be so high. And indeed, that's typically what you get in the beginning. That only starts, of course, you do not build that manufacturing capacity before you actually need the people to be there. I mean, the development stage takes several years. You do not have these people waiting to do the manufacturing from year one. You do that as soon as indeed the scheduled first capacity comes into view, well adjusted for how long it takes to actually assemble or build the plane. Once these first aircraft are produced, there is this thing of proto-production. The first 10, 20, in this case we say even 100 planes are all proto-production in the sense that this is the phase in which you still learn in your detailed design quality from the experience in production. And here you've got your link for manufacturing required to manufacturing capacity, and this then becomes the feedback loop. So depending on how much production you have and how quickly you want to get the production out of the door, you have a certain manufacturing required. Of course, also depending on whether or not it's already time to do so, and against a certain maximum capacity, and that then leads to an adjustment in manufacturing capacity. And that's the production stage.